So thank you very much, everybody, for attending this evening and spending the next hour or so with Justin and I. You guys all probably mostly know me, but there are some names that I don't recognise. So I'm Kat, I'm the Operations Director here at the MiSmile Network. So I'd like to introduce Justin in just a moment, but I'd like to say first, if the name showing on your screen, on your Zoom screen, doesn't show me exactly who you are, would you mind just popping me a note in the chat box, just directly to me, so that I can see who you are, so that I can register you, so I can make sure your CPD gets sent to you and that you have access to this recording after today. Thank you very much. A little bit of housekeeping. Also, with regards to questions, you're probably going to have a lot of questions as we go through, but don't worry, Justin and I will have plenty of time at the end for any questions. So if you do have any questions, can you just please pop them in the chat box? And then when we get to the end of the presentation, I'll read them out for Justin to make sure he's answering everybody's questions that we've got in this evening, and nobody's going unbeknown to anything they want to know this evening. So we'll get kicked off. So thank you very much, Justin, for joining us this evening to deliver this presentation to our MiSmilers. Anybody that came to the conference back in May will probably recognise Justin. MiSmile have been working with Justin now for a long time, a close personal friend of Sandeep's and a very close personal friend of MiSmile in the business. He's a sales and leadership training company called Focus for Growth. He's a best-selling author of a series of books, Inspire, Influence and Sell, and Inspire, Consult and Sell. So if you haven't read those books, I can put some links to them. Are they available on Amazon?
Yes, they are, Kat. Yeah, both of them. That's right.
I'll put some links to those books in the chat for Amazon as well, because I know everyone's going to end up asking me that when we get to the end, so I'll already advance that one. Justin's trained thousands of business professionals in some amazing companies in the dental industry. He works directly with Align Technology to help to train their staff. He's been working with our MiSmile team for a very long time, and he's part of the Diamond program. So he's our business coach that we work with closely in the Diamond program. Which we're delighted to do so. And he's been invited to speak, sorry, just admitting somebody else in, thousands of business professionals and lots of organisations, including the BDA, the BACD, FMC dentistry events, the Institute of Professional Sales and the Institute of Directors, and many, many more. So you are in very, very safe hands this evening. And in fact, Justin is the business coach that's on the Dental Practice Accelerator program. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this program that Sandeep's running alongside Dr. Samir Patel. Together they're mentoring, coaching one really, really lucky practice, a fortunate practice to become £1 million practice. So Justin's working very closely with Sandeep and Samir on that project. And he's also a co-host of the Dentistry on Purpose podcast with Mark Topley that I'm sure many of you will be aware of and probably have listened to it numerous times. They talk with market leaders in dentistry and about leadership, purpose, professional development and business growth. So a long introduction, but I think it's important to really for you guys to get the confidence that you are in very safe hands this evening. So thank you very much for joining us. I'll hand over to Justin now, and I'll see you all towards the end in an hour or so.
Thank you so much, Kat. What a lovely introduction. Thank you. I'm just sharing my slides, just checking that you can see my slides, if that's okay.
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, great. So, first of all, huge thanks to Kat for giving up your evening this evening to host the webinar with me and the MiSmilers, and huge thanks to everybody for joining us this evening as well. We are aiming to finish by 8 o'clock tonight, but if we do run over into questions, I'm quite happy to stay on for 5 or 10 minutes after that as well, if everybody would like. As Kat says, as we go through, if you've got comments or questions, please drop them into the chat and we will allow some time at the end to answer any questions that you've got as we go through tonight's content. And what we're going to talk about tonight is some work that I'm doing with a lot of practices and with the MiSmile network on how do we help increase Invisalign case acceptance through more impactful conversations with patients and consultations with patients. And the idea of this evening's session is to plant some seeds with you and just get you thinking. I'd love to get you thinking differently about the way you structure some of your conversations. And in particular, you know, we've got a lot of experience on tonight's call, a lot of people who are already really successful in practice, you're really successful with patients. So this isn't about teaching you things to replace what you know, it's about enhancing and enriching what you already know. So look for the edges, you know, that those small changes that are just going to help you enhance the patient experience and improve and increase Invisalign case acceptance in your practice. And of course, if you're doing other treatments, it'll help with other treatments as well, because we'll talk about principles that work across all of the different treatment functions and specialities that you're using in practice. So I've already said it's about kind of communication this evening. We'll check in on the patient journey and how the sales process, your consultation sales process, should align with it. And that's always a bit of a light bulb moment for a lot of people when we talk through it. We'll talk about questioning principles to help better understand patients' needs. We'll look at a communication structure that we use from the best-selling book that helps kind of create more positive consultations with patients. And we'll discover a really simple technique for gaining commitment from patients as well. So there'll be lots of value from this evening's session. Hopefully just, you know, some real sharpening of the edges in terms of consults and communication this evening. I'm not going to do this slide because Kat did such a great introduction to me. So thank you, Kat. And but just
I stole your thunder, sorry.
No, you didn't. Not at all. Not at all. The only thing I would say is, and not a lot of people realise this, but I started out originally in dentistry 32 years ago as a dental technician. So I had 4 years at the bench and then realised I didn't want to work as a dental technician anymore. And then I went into sales, and from there, sales, leadership positions, running businesses. I had a foray out, quite a long foray outside of dentistry for about 12 years, and then came back to dentistry when I set up my own business back in 2017. So really privileged in that time to have been working with some incredible organisations, including the MiSmile network. So really do feel genuinely privileged to be working with you all as well this evening. And as Kat says, I've written 2 books. The first book was a book for sales and business professionals, and I had a lot of dentists read it because of my network in dentistry, and had a number of requests to write the book specifically for dental teams, and that's why the second book was published earlier this year. So if you haven't had the chance to read it, I'd love it if you would, because obviously I like you to buy my book, but more than that, it really, the feedback from the book has been absolutely fantastic. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well if you get the chance to read it. Okay, so we've got some great participants on the call this evening. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to run a couple of polls, if I may. So the first one I'm going to ask is about your role. So actually, I think these two are probably going to come up. They might come up at the same time. So do the first one first, if you would. Which of these best describes your role? Are you a practice owner or a practice leader / practice manager? Are you a partner in a practice? Are you an associate? Are you a TCO, or are you a dental nurse? Or are you another role that I've mentioned, in which case just put that in the chat if you wouldn't mind. So just put in there which of these best describes your role. And as you're doing that, you'll see there's a second question, which I'm going to go to at the same time. So once you've put in your role, if you could then answer, what is yours or your team's biggest challenge in the patient consultation? And we've got a number of options there as well. So the first is discussing the price for Invisalign treatment. The second is asking for commitment to start treatment. The next one is articulating the benefits of treatment with you, your practice, differentiating you from other practices or other clinicians. The fourth is asking the right questions of the patient. And then the fifth is creating the best possible patient experience. So I'd love to hear your thoughts or your answers to these 2 polls. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just in case you're considering it and thinking about your answers. And then as soon as we get to, we're at 10 out of 24 of you so far. So once we get up to 16, I'll close the polls. So I'm just going to let you give you a moment just to capture that. So what's your role in practice? And what is yours or your team's, may not be your specific challenge, but the team, if you're in a practice team, you'll know which is the biggest challenge in the patient consultation. And is it asking for commitment? Is it discussing price? Is it articulating the benefits of treatment? Is it asking the right questions of the patient? Is it creating the best possible patient experience? So I'm just going to give you another moment to answer that. We've got 14 out of 25. So if anyone's feeling shy, please feel free to click on the button. These are completely anonymous. We won't be able to identify any of you if you answer the questions. And we are 56% participated. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to close the polls and I'll share the results with you, because I don't think you can see them just yet, but I've got full visibility. Okay, this is great. Really interesting answers today. Thank you. Good. We've hit the magic number 16. Thank you, everybody. Right, let's end the poll. So let me share the results with you. So what have we got? We have, first of all, in terms of the mix of people today, we've got 38% of the people on the call are practice owners, so welcome. 13% of people on the call are practice/business manager, so welcome to you too. 6% are associates, 25% TCOs, so welcome to the associates and TCOs as well. 6% dental nurses, 13% other. Oh, okay, hold on. So we've got practice owner discussing costs. Yeah, okay, so practice owners, thank you, everybody. And then in terms of the biggest challenge you face in the patient consultation, okay, this is interesting. So the winner is asking the right questions at 50%. So 50% of people saying asking the right questions is the biggest challenge, so thank you. 44% next is asking for commitment to start treatment, thank you. And then third place at 38% is creating the best possible patient experience. That's great news, thank you. And aspirational, that right? Aspirational, creating the best possible patient experience. Then runners up at the end is 13% saying articulating the benefits of treatment with us, our practice, our team. And then finally, discussing price for Invisalign treatment comes right in at the back at 6%. So excellent, thank you. Superb feedback. And interestingly, very much aligned with what I find in the conversations I have with other clients and people in my network. So when I run these polls, usually, this is the response we get. So you'll see very similar to tonight. Your number one was asking the right questions. That normally comes in at number 2. Your number 2 was asking for commitment. That normally comes in at number 1. And then creating the best possible patient experience, I think we're up there in the top 3. And then articulating benefits of treatment with us. So very similar layout. And I'll update these following tonight's webinar just to make sure that I stay current in terms of what the biggest challenges are coming up for patient consultations, in particular tonight with a focus on Invisalign. So these top 3 are very much aligned with tonight. So that's what we'll focus in on in tonight's session. I also want to share some other insights with you that I think might be useful as you consider key challenges. We have this platform that we use in Focus for Growth called the Patient Experience Scorecard, and it's a free diagnostic tool. And it consists of 36 assessment statements. You complete them, and at the end, it will give you a score in 5 key competency areas of managing patient consultations. We've had just over 1,200 people go through the scorecard in the last kind of 12 months or so. And so we've got some great data that we're building in the background. And interestingly, what comes out of our scorecard, we ask, as I say, a number of different assessment statements. And these are the numbers. This is really interesting. The number one thing that comes up, and this, interestingly, came up in our top 3 tonight, is as a practice team, we need to revisit our patient's experience. And that's 75% of people either agree or strongly agree. So really, it's a real area of focus to revisit the patient experience. And I'm sure you would agree that actually this is something that should be an ongoing, kind of almost continuous evolution of your practice and the way that we work with patients. The next piece of data that's interesting, aligns with our polls tonight, is this statement that says, I ask high quality questions that elicit my patient's greatest needs and priorities. 60% of people agree, so thereby 40% of people either disagree or aren't sure. They're kind of unsure about that. And the questions is such an important element to the consultation. We'll talk about that in more detail. And then articulating the benefits of treatment, 66% of people say, yeah, I feel I can do that. I can articulate the benefits of to the patient of treatment options and that our practice provides. But thereby, 34% saying they're not having that same level of confidence. And then finally, this one's really interesting. I'm confident to ask patients for commitment to treatment every time, and only 51% either agreeing or strongly agreeing. So almost a 50-50 split between people who feel confident and those who don't. So we'll look at some techniques for this evening. But what's interesting, sometimes we go from the problem straight to here's how you address it. And unless we understand the problem and the impact of the problem, we can kind of fall into the trap of just assuming that it's going to be okay if we make a few tweaks. So before we go into the solutions, let's just quickly check in on the challenge. So I've reordered these now because I've ordered them in sequence. So sequence, if you think about the sequence, asking the right questions is the first step. Articulating benefits of treatment should be the second step. Asking for commitment then flows from that and should be the third step. So rather than addressing them in the order they are a problem, I'm addressing them in the order in which they flow, because that is going to help you just to think about the structure that you need to take to improve it. So challenge number one is about asking the right questions so we understand the patient's needs. Now, one of the challenges here is that a lot of dental teams feel pressure when they're with a patient to have all the answers and to direct the patient consultation. And through that pressure, what happens is they tend to talk more than they listen. And so patients don't get the chance to explain what they're thinking and also what's most important to them. And so because they don't get that time to process it, to talk about what they're looking for, their aspirations, their outcomes for treatment, they then don't feel listened to or understood. And when they don't feel listened to or understood because there's more talking happening at them from the dental team and they're not being asked the right questions, they're not being listened to, all of a sudden the patient just starts to think that everything is generic. They don't feel as if the treatment's tailored or relevant. And so what then happens is that it dilutes the value. So because they don't have the chance to articulate what they're looking for and explain it and feel listened to, the value perception reduces significantly. So we really do have to address this as a priority. And what we find is that when we ask the right questions of somebody else, it doesn't have to just be a patient, could be our team members, could be our colleagues, our peers. By asking the right questions, we kind of find that we get halfway to providing a solution to the problem. But it's so often the step that's missed. And we're going to talk about some really simple principles for asking questions as we go through tonight's webinar. So that's challenge one. Challenge two is about articulating the benefits of treatment with us. So with our practice, with our clinicians, with us as a provider, and in particular without sounding like it's a sales pitch. Because when we feel like we're making a sales pitch, even we start to get resistant to the way that we position it. And so because we're unsure how to differentiate treatment, whether it's Invisalign or composite bonding or implantology, whatever it is, because we're unsure often how to differentiate it without sounding like we're selling or pitching, we kind of tend to back away from it, or certain clinicians back away from it. And if we talk about features before we've asked the patient about the right questions and truly understand what they're looking for from treatment, there's this thing that happens with patients. They tend to focus on price if they haven't had the chance to explain what they're looking for, because everything seems as if it should be, the same value. That's why they might say, well, the practice down the road is advertising at X price, because they don't understand the value or the bespoke tailored treatment option. And as soon as we start to ask questions and join up the dots for the patient, price becomes less of a focus. But then what happens when the patient focuses on price, the discussion of the price of the fees then becomes uncomfortable for both the patient and sometimes for the clinician. And so we find that patients then start to shop around and they're just focusing on price. And people focus on price when they don't understand value. And that is the key distinction around how we articulate benefits linked to what we understand the patient needs, which is so crucial. And we'll talk about how to join those up in a minute. And thinking about this, when you are experts at what you do, when you know a lot about how something works, Invisalign treatment or any other treatment, you've got this huge sphere of what you think is important to tell the patient. But there's this piece around what interests them that's completely opposite to what you think is important. And what's really important for both parties, you and the patient, is to find this overlap, find this zone where you know what's relevant to them, what you think is important and what's interesting to them. And we do that through the joining up of the questions we ask and being able to position treatments in a way that's really compelling. And we're going to cover both of those as part of our session tonight. And then challenge 3 is about asking for commitment to start treatment. Now, what we've noticed is that even when patients have a clear desire for treatment, if, again, it all links together, if the needs aren't clarified, and then if the treatment isn't presented in a way that's really relevant, then patients are resistant. And that resistance surfaces in kind of either indecision or just kind of not making a commitment of any kind. So then what happens is we find that teams will inadvertently talk too much, and even talk even more, and start to unintentionally pitch treatments. And because the patient isn't truly understood, the pitch or the presentation of treatment just doesn't convince the patient. It's not compelling. And so patients tend to opt to think about it, or they just don't commit because they're left a little uncertain about the value that's being created as part of the treatment. So you can see how this starts to proliferate. If you don't fix this as a problem, you'll have issues with case acceptance, you'll have issues with kind of patient engagement, and ultimately the patient experience that we know is so valuable. But at the same time, if we don't learn to ask for commitment, if we don't ask, the answer is always going to be no, right? You remember that as children. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. And sometimes we get afraid of a no, when actually we should kind of look into a no and lean in. I'm going to share with you a really simple principle tonight that's going to help you get clearer about how to ask for commitment. But the consequence of all of these different kind of components, that really it's about not joining up the dots for the patient. We tend to find treatment acceptance rates are lower. There's an inconsistency around treatment recommendations, and the patient doesn't find them quite so compelling. And we find that all sorts of things happen. The patient experience suffers, team performance is erratic, results are kind of compromised, and also the practice doesn't reach its full potential. And so what we really want to do is avoid this issue where teams aren't confident to communicate with patients, because until we get it right, we then start to lose confidence in the communication. And if we're hesitant, then patients sense it. And if there's a struggle to ask for commitment, then that's ultimately going to become a barrier to growth for case acceptance for Invisalign and private patient growth. So what we don't want is to feel stuck doing reactive dentistry or reacting in that situation. We want to make sure that our consults are much more transformational for the patient, not functional. And we want patients, to not to feel indifferent about treatment. We want to feel that treatment is really compelling, and we want them excited to get started. And we want patient satisfaction improving. And of course, revenue for the practice is underpinned by our ability to have this, this more meaningful consultation with the patient and maximize our growth opportunities. So let's talk about how we do that. So sometimes we need to make a change in the way that we look at things. And when we look at things differently, everything changes. Just looking at the chat, Amy says, hi from Valley Centre. Hello, Amy. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us this evening. So I'm going to share a few things with you that hopefully will change your perspective this evening. So first is about the importance of communication. Communication is so important in dentistry. It's actually GDC principle number 2. Now, I know you know this, right? But GDC principle number 2 is about communicating effectively with patients, and in particular, giving patients the information they need in a way they can understand so that they can make informed decisions. Now, in order to give information to a patient in a way they understand, we have to first understand the patient. So that's why asking the questions and really engaging with the patient is so important. So let's talk about the patient journey, and let's talk about what we do in our consultative approach to the conversation with the patient should match that patient journey. And I always, whenever I start to talk about kind of conversation communication process, we always think about a funnel and moving people through a funnel. You'll notice that our funnel in this instance is upside down. The reason the funnel is upside down is largely because actually we think about going from the bottom up rather than the top down. We're always drawing people through this kind of conversation, through this process with us, and we have to pull them up rather than pull them down, because gravity acts against us in these conversations, not for us. And so the patient enters the conversation with us largely unaware. Even if they're inquired about Invisalign, they're unaware usually of all of the finite details, all of the different perspectives, all of the value that's available as part of Invisalign treatment. They normally oversimplify things, so they're unaware in the first instance. And our job as practice teams is to make sure that we're well prepared, that we have all the information, we have the relevant insights, that we're able to share key pieces of information with patients that just spark their interest. And when we do that, we're able to then get the patient's attention. And the whole idea is that the patient moves through these stages as they go through their own decision-making process. And when the patient's attentive, our job then is to share some insights, just some high-level insights, some things that they don't know that help them to start to create this awareness that treatment isn't quite what they thought it was going to be. It's actually, much more functional, there's much more opportunity for them. They can get much more from treatment than they realized. And through that insight, the patient then becomes interested. So they go from attentive to interested. Now, when the patient's interested, that's the kind of trap that is set, because normally what happens when we see someone who's interested, we start to talk about what we can offer. And actually our role in that part of the process is to stop talking and to start listening and ask great questions and really understand what the patient needs. And as we ask the patient questions about their needs, what they're looking to gain from treatment, what some of their reservations might be about treatment, some of the considerations we'll have to make sure are part of the treatment pathway for the patient. By asking the right questions, the patient explains it. And as they explain it, they sell themselves from interested to desire. So all of a sudden, they've got some desire to change because they've been helped to shape their thinking around what they're looking for. And when a patient is in a position of desire, that's when we start to talk about a solution, and not before. So we talk about a solution, we discuss it with the patient, they give us some feedback as we're discussing it, and through that process, they move to a point where they want to take action. When the patient is in a position where they want to take action, that's when we would say, well, here's a proposal for how treatment would work. But we wouldn't do it before. And this is one of the big challenges that we see in practice. One of the big challenges I've experienced in the past personally is that we kind of make proposals far too soon when the patient's only at attention. And if the patient's at attention and we're proposing, they're just not ready to commit. And that's why sometimes they'll say, let me think about it. So proposal when the patient's at the right stage in our communication process. And then, of course, they'll commit to treatment. And even when a patient commits to treatment, our job then is to make sure we initiate something. Because if we don't initiate the treatment pathway at that point, or a deposit payment, or some form of action, then what we find is that patients will tend to kind of slip back down through this reverse funnel that we talked about. But ultimately, what we're looking to create long term is loyal patients that choose to, work with our practice, work with our team, see the value, not think about price, think about quality and their oral health. And we do that through an ongoing process of improvement, reflection, self-coaching, and really trying to just improve the overall experience for patients and our practice teams. So that's the kind of ideal pathway. What we find happens is that, the usual pathway is that there's not as much preparation done as people would like. There's this introduction to the practice and to treatment, minimal questions asked, genuine desire to try and solve a problem for the patient, but then a pitch around treatment that leaves the patient with indecision. And then if we repeat that cycle, we find ourselves in this trap where we can't quite make the change that we're looking for to improve and transform consults. So we're going to fix that this evening as part of today's session. Now, there's this lesson I learned years ago twice. I learned this lesson twice, once in a sales role and second as a leader in a leadership role. And that is that commitment from anyone, whether it's a patient, whether it's a client, a customer, whether it's a team member, commitment from people is pulled from them. It can't be pushed. So you can't push someone into doing something sustainably. What you'll find is much more effective is to pull it from people through questions, through coaching, through a consultative approach, commitment really is much more effective when we pull it from people, we don't push it into people. And we've got this model that I've talked about, the patient journey. This model that we use in the business focus growth, this INSPIRE model, we use it with our clients, is thinking about establishing relationships with patients, making sure we're well prepared, so we understand which treatment options, we understand all of the different kind of relevant features, insights, benefits, and then we start to manage our communication process with some insight for the patient. We then ask them about their needs. Once we understand their needs, then we talk about a solution. Once we've agreed on a solution with the patient, we make a proposal that the patient will agree to. We then initiate action to make sure that we've got momentum for the patient, and then we reflect and continually improve. And it becomes this cycle of evolution of the patient experience and the practice. And we run through that in depth, but if you'd like to go deeper into this, please do pick up a copy of the book, because we go really in depth around each of these different stages. But this becomes a model that you can then use as your frame of reference for all of your patient consults and all of your transformative conversation with your patients and team. So how do we address the three challenges? The first one, asking the right questions. Okay. So where this fits in our model is in the needs discovery stage, and really is important. It's vital that at this stage we slow things down in the consultation. We encourage the patient to open up, and our job really is to seek to understand the patient, because everything we need to serve the patient, to gain their commitment, is in their mind, is in their head, and there's only one way for us to get it out, and that's to ask questions and listen carefully. And I love this quote about listening and silence, that they're both made up of the same letters. You can't truly do one unless you do the other. So in order to listen effectively, you have to create some silence. That means not talking, not jumping in, not making assumptions. And the interesting, I love this Richard Branson quote as well, that we should listen more than we talk, because nobody learned anything by hearing themselves speak. So that's really a reminder to myself this evening. But let's talk about questioning. So we must listen, right? So listening is really important. And when we're tuned in to listen to the patient, then we need to know the difference between the types of questions that we ask and when we ask them. And there are three types of questions. The first type of question are open questions. They're questions that get people talking. They get the patients talking, they get your team members talking, and they help you to really understand everything that's going on in that person's mind. The second type of questions are probing questions. And that's when you might have asked an open question, you get an answer, but it's not really what you were looking to gain. You're really looking for a little more information, so you probe a bit deeper. It just means you stay on the same topic, you don't move on to the next area, you just probe a little deeper in that area. And then the final questions are closed questions, and that's really when we want to ask for commitment, or we want to clarify information. We shouldn't really be asking closed questions for anything else other than gaining commitment. And if we think about where those questions or structure of questions fit alongside the patient journey, and this is really useful to consider, open questions really do take the prime position at the start of our consultation, start of the conversation with patients, when we're trying to understand their needs, we're trying to get them to open up, build trust, and sell themselves through these early stages of the consult. Probing questions happen in the middle, where we've asked open questions, we just want to gather more information, we really want to get the patient, help the patient to get clear on what they're looking for. We do that through probing questions. And then towards the end of our process, we start to ask closed questions to clarify and gain commitment. And what we find is that people tend to ask a lot of closed questions right the way through the process. And closed questions are a bit of a trap for us when we think we make these assumptions about what the patient's here for. And we say, is it this? Is it that? Have you had this? Will you do that? And before you know it, you've just got a string of yes or no answers, and the patient hasn't really opened up. So we have to ask higher quality open questions, especially early in the cycle. So that's asking the right questions, knowing when to ask which type of questions in the process with the patient. So once you've asked the right questions and the patient's explained what they're looking for, now is the time to be able to articulate benefits of treatment. And we move on to the next stage of our model, which is the solutions discussion. And we should only do this, so a reminder to us all, it's only after you understand the patient's needs that we discuss the Invisalign solution. We shouldn't really talk about it too much until we understand what they're looking for, and then we match what they've told us they're looking for with the treatment solution discussion that we have. And we have to be able to ourselves, if we can't understand and articulate the value to patients, then we recognize that they're always going to focus on price and cost. If they don't understand the value, cost becomes a greater priority. So that's really important for us to get our minds around. And so we think about the way that we position treatment in three ways. We think about features of what the product does. We think about advantages, how it's an advantage to the patient. And then we think about benefits. What's the value the patient gains from that feature? And really, features are, if we just talk about features, then they tend to be trivial. Advantages tend to offer a competitive advantage. What's different? What is unique or special about this for the patient? And then finally, the benefit is about what's best for that patient from that feature of the product. And as you can imagine, with Invisalign, there are lots of different features, and understanding how to position the various features and their relevant advantages and the benefit that has to the patient is really important, because patients and people in general don't join up and connect the dots themselves. So we have to say that, Invisalign does this, that's an advantage because it offers you this, and that's a benefit to you because you'll also get this as an outcome. And learning to just structure that as a flow in the conversation with the patient is really valuable. And there's a great example. We actually use Invisalign in the book as an example to use this structure, feature, advantage, benefits. So thinking about those three components is really important, because that'll help you get much more engagement from patients. So you understand their needs, you understand how to position benefits of treatment, articulating benefits linked to their needs using the feature, advantage, benefit structure. And then once you've done that and the patient is kind of with you on the journey and they've sold themselves through the different stages and they seem ready to take action, then it's about how we ask for commitment. And for us, that stage is proposal agreement. And I appreciate I'm going through this quite quickly this evening. If you want to go into more depth, then at the end, I'll talk to you about an option for that. But proposal agreement is our next stage. And when we're ready to make a proposal, one of the things that I learned, it must be 25 years ago in a sales context, that was kind of game changing for me, and I'm hoping that this will be game changing for you this evening, is that as you're about to make a proposal, before you make the proposal, you check in with your patient. And we do this, we have this stage which I call permission to gain commitment. In sales, they call it a pre-close or a trial close. Okay, so I'm going to ask if I can close or gain commitment before I ask commitment. And it's as simple as a couple of examples here. Is there anything else we need to cover before we discuss the treatment proposal or the treatment plan? So what you're really asking here is, if I was going to talk about the treatment plan, are you ready? Yeah. Is there anything else we need to cover before we discuss the treatment proposal? And if patients aren't ready, they'll now tell you, and they're telling you at a time when you haven't said, do you want to start treatment? So there's less pressure on you, there's less pressure on the patient. It surfaces anything else that's on their mind, and it enables you to handle it, ready to then ask for commitment. So it's a pre-commitment stage. Another example, if I was to make a treatment proposal, have you got everything you need to make a decision today? And let the patient explain, let the patient answer. They may just say, yes, I think I'm ready. Great. Let's make a proposal. Right? So it's just straight in. If we went ahead with what we've discussed, would you be ready to decide today? So it's a really nice conversational, gentle way to ask if the patient's ready. And as I say, if they, for whatever reason, they're not ready, then we've got this option to then handle that discussion without feeling as if we've fully asked for commitment and then feel like we have to back away from the conversation. It's a really nice way to handle it. And once you've done that, so once the patient says yes, then, and you know this yourselves, but once we've done that, you can then explain the relevant details, the treatment pathway, what's involved, number of visits, duration, preparation before and after treatment, pricing, value, payment options, deposits, terms, appointment terms, reschedule notices, charges if they're breached, that kind of thing, and then check it meets the patient's expectations. But the big idea here is this pre-commitment, asking permission to gain commitment, and that it really is such a transformation in your conversation with patients. And if you followed the steps that we talked about that precede these, so asking the right questions, gathering the patient's needs, presenting a compelling treatment solution that matches their needs, and then asking this pre-commitment question, you will notice that those three things are completely transformational for your consultations with patients. So 3 really big ideas this evening that will make a huge difference. And then the final thing is this: just to remember that even if the patient says yes at that stage, we have to make sure that we get full commitment, because enthusiasm for all of us has a half-life. We're like super enthusiastic about something, and then as soon as we walk out the door, we're like goldfish. Your mind's gone on to something else. So we have to get people's commitment, and we have to just make sure that we initiate that final action, which is the kind of final stage of our process. So we're at 1:45. There's a couple of other things I want to cover. Normally at this stage, people say, if I want to know more, what could we do? And I'll talk to you about that in a moment. But before we go there, I don't want to dilute what we've covered so far. 3 big themes tonight. I'd love to hear in the chat, on reflection of the last 45 minutes, what are your key actions or key takeaways from tonight's workshop? And the other reason we do this, so I'll let you chat and type in the background, please. What are your key takeaways into the chat box? The reason we do this is because consolidating and just kind of taking a moment to think, actually, what am I going to do with this, can be really powerful as part of integrating learning and thinking beyond just a session like tonight into how do we make this valuable in practice. So if you would just tap on your keyboards or your phone screens and drop into the chat what are your biggest takeaways, or what are your key actions to focus on from tonight's workshop. I'm going to give you a moment to do that in the background. If you're anything like me, one of the reasons I didn't continue to be a dental technician, as my boss told me at the time, my lab manager told me at the time, I have banana fingers. So he said, you were never going to be a successful technician with those fingers, Justin. So it always takes me a little longer to type than most other people. So I'm going to let you have a bit more time. Brilliant, thank you. So we've got some great comments in here. Let's have a look. Anna, thank you. Take time to listen to the patient more at the beginning, as it may open up a lot of conversations. Absolutely, thank you, Anna. Yeah, really valuable. Lucy, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Lucy. Not filling the silence when waiting for a patient to answer a question. Yeah, that's so good, Lucy, and it's so tempting. The more you know, the more experience you have, the more tempting it is to jump in and fill that space, isn't it? So yeah, conscious reminder to yourself, not filling the silence when waiting for a patient to answer. Thank you, Lucy. Yasmin, understanding patients' needs to be able to understand how we can help them. Yeah, understand the patient's needs first, so that you truly understand how you can help them. Yeah, thank you, Yasmin, that's great. And Dr. Anusha, do the pre-closure before discussing the price and listen more. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Anusha, that's great. I don't know who that is, but it's someone on the iPhone. Listen first, then ask more open questions to ensure that the patient's needs are identified early on in the consultation. Some brilliant takeaways this evening. Thank you, everybody. That's great. Yamint, I think. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that completely wrong. Yeah, I'll call you Yay. Pre-closure and listen more. Brilliant. Thank you. Darab, talk less. Yeah. Nice. That's very succinct and to the point. You are practicing what you preach already, Darab. I like it. Talk less. Yeah, and then Sanjeev, ask permission to make a proposal. Thanks, Sanjeev. Dominic, biggest takeaways: 1, patient journey funnel. Think about the funnel, the journey. Thank you. And 2, proposal agreements rather than giving the proposal earlier. Yeah, leave it later on in the consultation. Make sure you understand the patient first. Thank you, Dominique. Mumta, prepare better questions and also give patients time to speak, ask permission for commitment. Thank you, Mumta. Is that Mumta? Is that the same Mumta that was with me on the stand at the conference? Ah, lovely. Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening, Mumta. Lovely to hear from you. Tracy, ask more probing questions, talk less, and complete pre-closure before payment discussion. I think you've got it, folks. I think you've got, there's no need for me to hang around. You've got it, I'm off. No. No, I'm only joking. That's great. Thank you all so much. That's perfect key takeaways. I couldn't have written them better myself. Okay, before we go to Q&A, and so if you've got questions, please start to think about questions and do put them in the chat. There's a couple of other things. So normally at this stage, people will say to me, oh, so if we wanted to go deeper into this topic, Justin, what can we do? You absolutely can get a copy of the book. It will really help. There's something else we're doing at the kind of request of people. We've had a number of inquiries about open programs. So we are launching in January what we are calling the Practice Growth Academy. And we had a launch recently in London with some of the dentists from our communities joined us. And we really talked about, thinking about how do we help to transform the patient consultation? How do we help improve communication with patients? How do we use that as a platform for growing our private practices to improve the patient experience and really start to also build a community of dentists who want to support each other on this growth journey? So we're starting this Practice Growth Academy. We'll start at the end of January, so we've got a little while before we start our first session. But the way that it works is that we've got, I talked about the scorecard earlier. We'll invite everybody joining us to take the patient experience scorecard. And then we'll have 2 days training and coaching on the models from the best-selling book. And we'll assign people accountability partners coming in. So everybody will have one other person that they work with throughout the 2 days, really to understand the content, really to start to share their experiences, their actions, what it means for their practice, how they're going to start to apply it beyond just our 2 days together. We'll all get access to the book, so everyone will get a copy of the book, but we've got an online program that works through all of the content structure, which we call the Practice Growth Academy online. So it's an online program that complements the main workshops. We use this really nice Inspire toolkit. It's like an electronic toolkit with all of the different documents and assets that support your implementation. It's really easy to communicate across practice teams as well. You can literally just attach it to an email and send it to your team so they start to get visibility of the changes that you're implementing in practice. And then the big thing is this follow-on. So after the 2 days together, we've got 2 90-minute coaching kind of web classes or group coaching workshops where we're going to talk about how is implementation going? How do you make sure that you get the very best outcomes from the program rather than just kind of do a course and leave you to figure it out yourselves? We're going to coach for implementation beyond the program, and that will be with you and your accountability partner that's assigned as part of it. And then beyond that, we're looking at, we've got some leadership development work going on in the background as well. So some mastermind group coaching beyond that for those people who want a bit more than just the initial program. And so I'll share these slides with you after today, but if you want to start your journey, just click on the patient experience scorecard, which we've got a link for, which I'll send you as part of the follow-up from tonight's session. And this is how the toolkit operates. So we use the structure of all of the different documents throughout our program. It's really nice, simple layout, but it gives you a pretty comprehensive kind of plan to manage not only the practice, but your consultations as well as part of this kind of increasing case acceptance and growing the private practice. And so the experience, our Practice Growth Academy is a 2-day workshop. It's at Y Boston Lakes Hotel in Cambridgeshire. We're about an hour north of London, about an hour and a half from Birmingham. And plus the 2 90-minute group coaching sessions. We're limiting it to 30 places. It's a residential, so it's 2 days, Friday the 27th, Saturday the 28th of January. We literally opened registration in the last couple of weeks. We've got an early booking discount till the end of November. And if anybody would like to talk in depth about this, Kat's very kindly put a link to a one-to-one. If you'd like to book a kind of short half-an-hour session with me to discuss it, please feel free. Otherwise, you can check out, if you just go to focusforgrowth.co.uk, and on there are links to all the courses. It's the Practice Growth Academy, so you can check out details. But if anybody would like a specific conversation, please feel free. And then the final thing I'd like to talk about, and then we'll go to Q&A, is just hopefully something that might spark a bit of inspiration this evening. We're on a mission at Focus for Growth. We've got a small team, but we're on a mission to really seek out world-class business best practice and bring it to dentistry, and then inspire clients that work with us to become market leaders and think about the impact they make in their communities and ultimately, you know, in the world. And one of the ways that we practice what we preach, which is always important, I think, you know, that congruency, we have these 5 values in the business. The first is about being a force for good, really thinking about how do we do something bigger than just our business. The next is about ownership, really think about how we take ownership for everything that we kind of roll out with clients, everything that we're acting upon as part of the business. And obviously clients are at the center of everything we do. Without clients, we don't exist, same way that without patients, practices don't exist. And then we think about these last 2 as, you know, unlimited potential. Think about the true potential that lies in all of us, you know, the greatness that lies in all of us. And linking to that, this whole principle of succeed or learn. So really leaning into a growth mindset, that there is no failure. We either succeed or we learn the lesson and move on. And we are advocates for the United Nations Global Goals. I don't know if anybody is familiar with these, but there's 17 goals developed by the leading nations in the world to improve equality and life on Earth. And what the recommendation from the UN is, if you want to be a supporter and advocate of the goals, is to pick one that most kind of resonates with you and your business. So the one that we pick is goal 8, decent work and economic growth. And we genuinely believe we can impact that through the work we do at Focus for Growth. We're also proud members of the 1% Pledge, where we pledge 1% of resources, time and revenue to worthwhile causes. And the way I do that personally, one of the initiatives we have is this Walk and Talk for Men, which is a volunteer group I lead in Cambridgeshire. And I started this coming up for 2 years ago now. And we've got this community that we've built. We started off with monthly walks. We're now up to weekly walks. We've got 5 ambassadors that lead walks for us. And we are seeing, you know, on average about kind of between 20 and 30 people join a walk every week. And over time, we've helped over 180 men now to kind of seek support, get support as part of our community. And it's become, you know, a bit of a passion project of mine, completely unrelated to the business in one sense, but related in another, because the amount of kind of local engagement I get, the inquiries I get as part of, you know, the Walk and Talk for Men community is quite remarkable. So I share this with you because it's something, one, I'm proud of, but 2, because it might just start to spark something in you around what you can do in your local communities, and think about the impact you make, you know, beyond just the practice, beyond just your business, just your business, you know, beyond your business and into, you know, the communities where your patients thrive and live, and how you can help to make a real difference. So if you'd like to, Kat shared a link there. If you'd like to get in contact with me, all of my details are on the screen. You can scan my link tree and feel free to connect with me. Feel free to drop me a message. Feel free, if you'd like to schedule a short one-to-one, then I'd love to catch up with you individually if you're interested in doing any more work with our program. And now we'll take 5 to 2. We've got 5 minutes before the hour. We'll take some questions, and I'd love to hear some of your kind of thoughts or questions before we finish today.
Guys, feel free to either unmute yourself and ask the questions outright. I'm sure most people won't, but some people might do. So feel free to do so at this point, or feel free to pop your questions in the chat box if you would rather be a little bit more
discreet. Yeah. You have to be brave to come on to ask a question. I'd be interested. Who's brave enough to come and ask a question? Who's got? Because somebody might have something burning away in their mind. So you are very welcome to join us and ask a question.
Everyone's very quiet. I think the weather's done everybody in, that cold weather. Everyone sat snuggled up under the blanket in their with a hot water bottle on the living room.
Yeah, maybe even with a lot of hot toddy or something.
Oh, so Lucy's asked a question here.
Thank you, Lucy.
If you could only ask one open question, which I assume is to a patient, what would it be and why, Justin?
Great question, Lucy. Thank you. Yeah, great question. So it would be something like this, Lucy. So I'd very rarely ask one question because I'm a nosy bugger. But if you boil me down to one question, it would be something like this. I may not get it right first pass, but it's something along the lines of what absolutely must happen for this treatment to meet all of your needs. Do you want to say it again?
Yeah.
So you're in the conversation with the patient. One question: what absolutely must happen for this treatment to completely meet all of your needs? And then shut up and listen. Right. Thank you, Mamta. And I think the answer you said why as well, Lucy. I think the answer is probably obvious, right? But if you've only got one question, then actually it's all about helping the patient to go, right, what is the one thing I must focus on? And it's okay, what needs to happen for that to truly meet your needs? And they'll tell you. And then from there, I'm going to break your rules, if I may. Lucy, I'm going to break your rule. I've asked the one question, the patient tells me, and then as they're telling me, I'm listening. I'm paraphrasing. Oh, so this, yes, and they say yes. And as I paraphrase, they tell me a bit more, and then they tell me a bit more. And as they're telling me more, I summarize that. So you mean this? And they say yes. And then just through the summary and my body language and me creating a bit of silence, they tell me even more. And so your one question cascades and becomes a series of information that the patient shares with you. And as they share it, they get more and more enrolled. And then as they get more and more enrolled, they are completely bought into you. And if they compare that with someone else they've been to see and someone else just pitches Invisalign at them, then the differentiation is no longer price related. It's, have I been understood? Do I really feel like this is the person that could deliver on what I really, really want that's in my head that I haven't had the chance to explain? And that becomes your differentiation. Yeah, open the floodgates. Thanks, Lucy. And I have to congratulate you. Very good question, Lucy. Thank you. Great question. Great question.
Even if you have got more than one question, that's just a great opening question. I know it's an open question, but an open question to open the conversation. And I think really, really listen to that with an open mind as well, because sometimes as clinicians, we might automatically think that that question is going to lead to a clinical answer. Well, I want this teeth straightening, I want this doing, I want that doing. But it could be that they want to be able to smile off the photographs on the wedding day, or it could be something to do with the customer experience because they're afraid of dentists and they want to feel comfortable in the chair. That could be so many different responses and answers in so many different ways. I think really listening with an open mind to be able to deliver the solution is yeah, awesome. Good question.
I'd love it. So people, attendees this evening, if you get the chance to ask a question like that, and it may be that particular variant of the question may not suit your style, so find one that aligns with it. I'd love to hear from you if you ask that question and you get a series of really good answers from patients. You probably get some information you weren't quite expecting. I'd love to hear from you if you do try it and you get some responses. Thank you. Really good.
I think it would give you a real insight into the personality of the person as well. So a direct person is probably going to give you a clinical answer. Well, I want this tooth straightening. Or you could get the social media people who are that personality, want to be able to smile for the photographs, or you want those people that want more confidence because they're going for a job interview or something. You get insight into the type of person you're dealing with as well, I think, which is important.
I think you're absolutely right, Kat. And by asking such an open question, and there's lots of different types of those open questions, you just get information that's on the patient's mind.
Yeah.
And you, because none of us are mind readers, it just enables you to just completely elicit what's most important to the patient. Yeah, really good. Thank you, Lucy. Appreciate that question. Really good, really good.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Justin, or anything they would like to comment on, or any other topics that you would like to see for these webinars? We've done a couple of clinical ones a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, improving conversion this evening. We've got another digital one coming up in a few weeks as well that we'll send an email out about after tonight. So if there's any other topics that you would like to see on these, Neeraj has raised his hand, then that would be great for you to share with us. Well, I don't know, do I need to unmute you, or can you unmute yourself? Do you want to ask your question, Neeraj?
Hi, I just wanted to ask that during the webinar you said we ask a question that are you okay to take a decision? Do we say that before giving a treatment plan or after giving a treatment plan?
So I would say just before, Neeraj.
Okay.
So you're asking for permission to give them the plan?
No, but is it all you need to make a decision today? There's something like that you mentioned, no?
Yes, yeah, because if you outline the entire treatment plan before you've asked them if they're ready to make a commitment to a treatment plan, then you've kind of spent a lot of time talking about something that potentially they're not ready to hear. Whereas if you ask for permission, so if we go through the treatment plan now, have you got everything you need to make a decision today? And if the patient says, well, I'm still not sure about this, or I'm not sure about that, then you can address that. Once you've addressed that, then you can go to the treatment plan. Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect.
So that's my recommendation. And if you do it that way round, when you then talk about the treatment plan, the patient's fully engaged and they've already had the chance to explain if there's anything that might be on their mind that could be a barrier to them making that commitment. If you handle that in advance, you then haven't got to handle it afterwards. And when you handle it afterwards, you sometimes feel a bit like you're trying to put pressure on the patient. So do it before, and there's just zero pressure.
It's also very difficult to say no, isn't it, after somebody's already agreed to that to start with?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you know, you're not going to convert, you won't get, 100% conversion, nobody does. But you will just increase your conversion rates using this process, because when you ask that pre-commitment question, that pre-commitment question surfaces anything that's a reservation for the patient, and then you can handle it before you've asked for commitment. If you ask for commitment and the patient then says, oh, well, this is a problem, it's like you're trying to shut the gate after the horse has bolted. This way you're just asking it in advance so you can handle it, then you make the treatment proposal. And patients may still say, I need to think about it. No problem. Just make sure that you've got your follow-up process really well defined, so that when a patient says, I need to think about it, you've got a way to handle that. There's someone in the team that's going to follow up with the patient so that you close the loop. Because if you don't close the loop, remember we said enthusiasm has a half-life, and patients just kind of tend to drift and forget. So we just make sure there's a follow-up process in place. Great question. Thank you, Neeraj.
And one more, if beforehand only the patient says, I may make a decision but may not, but we still then go ahead with the treatment plan.
So I would just say, if someone says I'm not sure,
yeah,
I'd ask another question. Just say, oh, that's okay. What are you unsure about?
Yeah.
Just ask.
What else do you need from me to help you make that decision today?
What are you unsure about? They'll tell you, and then you say, oh, okay. So if we can resolve this, then that would give you certainty today. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
But no, pleasure. Thanks for asking the questions, Neeraj. That's really useful. Thank you. But you'll notice that the default here is questions. Okay, so when the patient says, oh, I'm not sure, rather than go, well, we can do this, we can do that, which is what people tend to default to, just press the pause button and get curious. Okay, no problem. Back off. Okay, no problem. What exactly is the concern? Or what exactly is it that you need from me to be more certain? Or what else do we need to consider? And just by opening that up and answering with a question, absolutely, Lucy, answer a question with a question. When you ask the question, the patient will start to share the information that you need to understand where you go next with it. Good, thank you. Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, everybody. Great session.
Any other questions while we've got Justin?
It's your last chance.
It is certainly is. So
Last chance.
I'll waffle for just a moment while anybody's tapping away.
Until the next time.
Until the next time, yeah. So just a quick reminder, if you cannot be identified by your name on the screen, then if you could just send me a quick, just a direct message to me, just to let me know who you are. If you haven't already, I know quite a few people have, so thank you very much. Again, this has been recorded this evening, so we will share it over the next couple of days so that you can use it with your teams. TCOs, I would say this is absolutely vital for certain, and anybody else doing consultations within your practice will be super important. So just wanted to say thank you very much for everybody joining us this evening, and thank you very much, Justin. I'll also send that link out to book an appointment with Justin if you wanted to hear more about his 2-day course. It sounds, to be fair, awesome to me. I'd like to come for the jolly, never mind the education. So sounds like a really good course. So I'll make sure that link gets sent out. Mumty's just put there, thank you, Justin, it was brilliant, different way of thinking and very useful.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for that, Mumty.
Yeah, thank you, Mumty.
So thank you everyone for attending, and I look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Thank you, Lucy. Kat, thanks so much for hosting. Thanks everyone for giving up your evenings to spend the hour and a bit with us. I really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks everyone. Take care.
Bye bye.